Hello everybody and welcome to episode 8 of Board With Each Other, the board gaming podcast where we look at the world of tabletop gaming and review board games through the lens of playing it as a pair, whether that be as a couple or a really good friend or that strange guy that lives underneath the railway bridge that everybody affectionately calls a druid. I'm your host Al Simpson and I'm joined as ever by my player 2, my wife and my gaming partner Hannah Kelly.
Hi guys.
So today we are going to be talking about Mystic Vale. Mystic Vale is a deck builder, for want of a better term, I think probably fits into that category, with a very unique spin on the genre. And that spin is something called card crafting. So within playing Mystic Vale, you essentially have a deck that never grows in size, but you sleeve other cards called Enhancements. Advancements, not enhancements. Natural male enhancements.
That's something else.
Be reading my junk mail again. Onto those cards. Each card has space for 3 advancements on it. So while your deck never grows in size, the functionality of each individual card within that deck grows as you play. How play works is you take the role of a druid and you're supposed to be returning nature to the land after it's been corrupted by some sort of evil force. And to do that, you draw cards from your deck until you draw 3 red icons, which are corruption icons. When you draw the 3rd of those icons, it becomes basically what's called your on-deck card, so you place it on the top of your deck. You can choose to push your luck, which means you draw again, and you can continue to do so, but if you get a 4th red icon, you spoil, which means your turn ends immediately without being able to do anything. At the start of the game, you will have little mana icons on your cards, and you use those to purchase advancements from the 3 marketplaces, which are level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 has obviously the cheapest cards, but they are limited. I think in a 2-player game you only play with 13, so those disappear pretty quickly. And then levels 2 and 3, so the decks are so big they're pretty much unlimited, so you can get as many of those as you like. As you buy cards, they have different functions. They have, as always, a lot of different cards do different things during the game. Some cards have icons on them, so you'll have either a paw or a star or something like that, which you use to buy from a second marketplace, which is called Vale cards. Now, those Vale cards, a lot of the time, give you victory points at the end of the game, but they'll also have ongoing effects that you can sort of use once per turn to make your turns more effective. You also have a mana token, which you can flip over to gain an extra mana on your turn, and when you spoil, you then flip that over to its usable side again. So it's sort of a one-use thing until you spoil and then you get it back again. I think that pretty much covers the... one thing that's probably quite important to mention. Ending the game, you start with a limited pool of victory points. And you get cards on your turns that give you victory points when they appear in your field. When the victory point pool runs out, that's the end of the game. It's by no means determining the winner. Those are almost just a bonus. It's a game-ending mechanism, and it's a bonus number of victory points you have. A lot of the victory points at the end of the game come from the cards that the friends you've made along the way. So you will calculate that at the end, and you will find out who wins. So, with that said, that's the rules covered. I just wanted to sort of make clear in this podcast, I know we normally do games without expansions, or we have done games pretty much without expansions, although Carcassonne was an exception to that. I think we did that with expansions. We do have 2 expansions to this, which are Veil of the Wild and Mana Storm. I know there's a big box out now, which actually comes with the first 3 expansions bundled in, which I think is a very good thing. We'll get on to why later. For the purposes of this review, I am going to treat it as us playing with the expansions, because I think it makes for a bit more interesting discussion.
Is it worth then explaining... Most of the expansions are just additional cards, and therefore doesn't really change play, but is it worth mentioning the one that does change play? Yeah,
I mean, they both introduce a new mechanic. The mechanic's the same between them, but they just sort of expand on it. The new mechanic it introduces with the expansion that we have is you get a leader card. So at the start of the game, it's your choice, but you can choose to make one of your blank cards that you start with a leader card, and they have quite powerful effects and impacts during the game. And you can also flip them during the game to another side if you pay mana for it, which makes them even more effective. You can also change your mana token to an amulet, and all of those amulets have completely different effects. Some of them may actually cost you victory points at the end of the game, but allow you to do something really powerful in game. Some of them might be really rubbish compared to your normal one, but actually gain you victory points at the end of the game for playing with that instead. And again, there's interactions there where you can get things that actually make your amulets more effective. I know there's a bunch of other things they've done for it, like enemies and nemesises and things like that, which we haven't delved into as of yet. But I just wanted to make it sort of clear as to where we were in our sort of expansion journey on this, because it is a card game, it is massively expanded, and that's sort of where we're at.
It runs probably about 45 minutes, I reckon.
Yeah, I would say so. I think we've had a couple of quite long games, because you can kind of choose when the game ends by how many victory point gaining cards you acquire, or you can get into situations where neither player goes to those, and it can actually go on quite long. I think an hour and a half is probably the furthest we've gone, but the majority of games we play, I'd say about half an hour to 45 minutes, depending.
Yeah.
Okay, so saying that, what was your general opinion of Mystic Vale? This was 1 hour bolt out of blue, this one.
Yeah, so I think I bought it for you as a birthday or a Christmas present, and I just went wild on Board Game Geek, and I came up with this game sort of because I think I liked the sound of it and I wanted to play it.
Fair enough. I'm sure every board gaming couple will agree with a present for you kind of.
So I think kind of both of us didn't really know a huge amount about it.
I knew nothing about it. I'd never heard of it before you bought it.
I'm a big fan of deck builders in general, so I think definitely it plays to that strength. And of course, it's slightly high fantasy-ish. We've got druids and
druids
bears
and magic and stuff,
and owls.
Yeah,
so I'm quite happy. Yeah, it hits a lot of boxes for me. I also think one of the mechanics that's really cool is this idea about the way in which you buy advancements, and that you slot them into your sleeve. I've not seen that before. I don't know if that's
it was a new invention with this, as far as I understand. I don't know if it's like a patent. I don't know if other people are allowed to do it. I don't know if it's something I don't know if it's like a proprietary thing. I have not seen anything else with it. I need to do more research on that. I'm not sure, but as far as I know, it's the only game I've encountered with that particular mechanic.
Yeah, and that's really cool, and I think definitely sort of stands out from the crowd, I think, for that reason.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a point of difference. It's just not your sort of standard deck builder. With the deck builders we played, I also like the fact that there's two separate marketplaces, which I find quite unusual. I mean, I imagine there's others out there, but the fact that you have these different pools of resources and you're buying from two separate places, I find that quite cool. Because you're not just building your deck, you're also creating almost like a board state off to the side of it with all your Vale cards, so there's a bit more to it than just your basic deck. I guess the only other thing I want to mention, and it's not really about Mystic Vale as such, but I think it's just sort of a couples that board game together thing. Never underestimate the ability of a random gift to amaze. So if you're into the hobby, we have wish lists a mile long and games that we're looking at and what have you. And sometimes it's really nice to be surprised by something you never ever look at, just as a gift recipient. Like, oh, I've never even seen this before. That's really cool. It's one of the ways you can genuinely surprise when gifting in the hobby. And it doesn't have to be an amazing, great game. It's just the concept of just something new that you never would have thought of. And I just thought I wanted to mention that as an aside, as a couple that board game and buy each other board games as gifts sometimes.
It's nice to know that after 15 years I can still surprise you.
Yes, in ways, yes. Right, on that note, should we go on to some scoring?
Yeah, let's start. So, as usual, we'll start with general scoring before we move on to our couple-specific scoring. And so our first category is components. Now,
and set up and tear down. You're gonna go on a ride.
Can I get my soapbox out, please?
Yeah, I'll get the popcorn.
All right. So, Mystic Vale is a game that is about druids casting spells and incantations for those with the aptitude to cast them.
I'm glad you make yourself laugh.
Yeah, I do, my little Skyrim reference. To heal the land from a corruption that could possibly maybe be compared to a bit like maybe pollution, global warming, those sorts of things. And this is a game that comes with a huge amount of plastic waste.
Yes.
So each of your cards gets slotted into a plastic wallet that come with the game, which is really, really nice, and that's absolutely fine. And your advancements themselves are clear plastic.
Yeah, they're almost they're transparent aside from the bit of card, so the third of the card is taken up.
Yeah. And that bit I understand, although I'm not particularly happy about it. However, when you get it, each of those advancements is covered by a plastic film.
Yeah.
And I still, to this day, cannot understand why there's a plastic film on there. I'm sure there is a reason for it. However, and I'm by no means an eco-warrior. However, I do like to make sensible choices where I can to protect the planet, and it feels very at odds with the game and just a little bit like senseless waste, to be honest.
Yeah, it does feel quite wasteful. I mean, they come off, the plastic films come off very, very easily. And I remember the first few times we played, at the end of the game, we'd end up with a literal pile of plastic waste on the table. I was just looking at that and going, oof, that's not good.
Yeah.
I understand that they do it because the cards, by their nature, are made of plastic and quite thin plastic, and they're quite easy to scuff and mark. But I have to say, since the film came off, must have played over 20.
But they instantly come off. It's not like a case that you can keep them on, because I think we made a decision we're just going to keep them on until they came off. But every time you shuffle, they just start coming off. So they do nothing to actually protect the
No,
the cards
and I don't know
themselves.
how necessary they are, because like I say, after about 20 something odd plays, I don't see much scuffing or damage
and they must
to the
have gone
cards.
on after printing. They couldn't have gone on before printing.
No.
They must have gone unless they were transfer. I don't know. I mean, again, I just feel that there's a design flaw there.
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
feel
not a
like
designer by
they
nature.
could do a bit better there. But again, what do we know? Maybe there's an absolutely necessary reason why it happens, but
It
does feel very
wrong.
wasteful. Yeah,
Yeah,
does
it
feel
feels
very
wasteful, particularly given the theme of the game.
Yeah.
It feels very wasteful. So that's my soapbox around over and done with.
Yeah, I do agree with you to a certain extent there. I don't think it bothers me as much as it bothers you, but I completely get it, and I do think it is quite wasteful.
That said, I think that the concept of the sleeve, I've said this already, like the concept of the advancements that you put in your sleeve and you have... you will end up with like a card that's properly advanced, feels like this really thick, stacky, weighty card, and then you flip it, you're like, yeah, I've got a good card coming.
Yeah.
So that's quite satisfying. I think the artwork, particularly on the Vale cards, is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, some of the artwork is really genuinely quite stunning. Easily, it's sort of like Magic the Gathering in its prime level, I would say. I like how chunky the cards are.
Yeah.
After playing with so many fiddly cards, especially thinking, like playing things from like Fantasy Flight and from Gloomhaven, what have you, or from playing with these tiny little flimsy cards, the big chunky weighty cards are very satisfying to shuffle, they're very satisfying to turn over. The Vale cards are big, and again you could appreciate the artwork because they're so big, so yeah, I do like that side of things.
The box is fantastic, so even with all the
even with the two expansions, it all fits
everything
fine.
all fits back into the box, and there are nice little neat slots for it, which thank you very much. I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, it does come with good sort of storage within it. It's got decent dividers, everything. As I said, I have a feeling that they always had those first three expansions in mind, which is why I think the big box now comes with them. Because I think even if we got the other expansion, it would still go in all back in quite fine and fit into the divisions dividers it has in there. So that's good. Setup is pretty much non-existent.
Yep, shuffling.
Yeah, it's very, very quick. As Teardown, on the other hand, is a bit of a time sink.
Meh. I mean, I don't know how much of a time sink that really is, because you can score it as you strip down at the same time.
Yeah.
Although we don't tend to do that, but even then, it's just pulling things out of their sleeves.
Yeah, I know. It's just after particularly the longer the game goes, the more you're going to have in your cards, and yeah, it does take a bit of time to unsleeve every single card that you used and put them into the right piles.
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why we do this. Anything else on components you want to talk about?
No, I think that kind of hits it all for me. I think I've been quite generous here, and I've scored it a 5. And what's brought my score down is mainly amount Plastic Waste, and I wanted to score it lower.
Fair
I
enough.
felt like that was unfair.
Yeah, that probably feels a little bit harsh. I've gone for a 7, mainly because the Plastic Waste bothers me. I haven't really got any other issues with it as such, so I think 7 feels about right to me. Okay, so complexity. How well does the complexity serve the game? So if you've listened to us before, you know this, but we don't rate complex games highly and lightweight games low. It's how well we feel the game earns its complexity or needs its complexity.
So I think you and I are probably going to differ a little bit on this. I absolutely loved the base game, and I think for a long time it was one of my favourite games that I would always want to crack out.
Yep.
And there are reasons for that I'll probably talk about more later. And I think that for what it was absolutely fine. There was no arguing about rules there, although obviously there were some questions about, you know, the advancements and how they work and how they interact together, so it wasn't overly complex. And I think for a fairly lightweight, I'd say this is a lightweight game.
Yeah, light to medium. Definitely
on
the low end of medium if you go that way.
Yeah, I think the base game was absolutely fine. However, once we got the expansions, they definitely added a level, not necessarily of complexity, but I think...
strategy is what I would say. I think there's much deeper... I'll go for one.
Yeah,
I mean... Yeah, I would say strategy. I wouldn't say necessarily out of complexity. It's more about depth.
Yeah. And I think that was probably needed. And I think what I learnt quite early on was that I have a play style and I know what I like to do and I know how I like to play. And the expansion, having different leaders, forces me to play it slightly differently. And actually, I didn't realise that I wanted that challenge.
Yeah, completely fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I loved playing the base game to start with, but after a while, it started to feel a little bit shallow to me.
Yeah.
I felt like with just the base game that I wouldn't say we solved it, but we came to realise, or at least I came to realise, I think you did too, that if you went hard on the Vale cards, you're probably going to win. And once that was apparent to me, the strategy started to feel a little bit one note.
I don't necessarily think that it's any different now, though.
I do, and I think our last game proved that.
I think you probably had more Vale cards than me.
Yeah, but that's not where I got most of my points from. Anyway, this is not an argument people want to listen to us have. But I'll get on to why. So, yeah, I'd say if we were to review it without getting the expansions, this would probably be around a 5 for me. I think it's fine. I think the complexity is fine. I think it's really quick and easy to teach, really quick and easy to learn. You don't have to burn your brain down while playing it. You know, that's all fine. But I definitely was crying out for something else, something a bit deeper, which I feel like to a certain extent, perhaps not 100% of the way there, but a certain extent, the expansions did add for me. And for me, it was less about the leaders and amulets and more about the new cards. Because a lot of the new cards started to lean a lot harder into synergies.
Yeah.
So you get something on your card, and if you had an icon that matched it, you would get that card would become increasingly more powerful. And it's a bit of a gamble, you know, all the cards are going to come up. But it added a level of strategic depth to it that I don't think was there before. And the last game that we played, I experimented, tried to lean really hard into that, and most of my points came from those synergies.
Yeah.
So,
whereas realistically, I lost
works.
victory points because of that, but I didn't lean hard enough into it, so I never was able to compensate. No.
So I do think there's a lot more there, and I imagine with more expansions, they add more. I think they add more mechanics and more things to it. And I think, you know, it's how far you want to go with it. But I definitely think it has breathed new life into it for me. I think I was verging on done with it when we're towards the end of the time we just had the base game. So
I would also point out we've had this for
a long
several
time,
years,
we've had this a long time.
Again, it was pre you keeping stats on games, but we must have knocked up at least 30 plays.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say probably around the 30 mark. So yeah, I mean, given that, how would you rate it complexity-wise?
So including the
expansions,
enhancements,
the all-male enhancements, yeah.
including the expansions, 7.
The same. Yeah, I've also gone for 7, but like I say, it would have been a 5.
I don't think I'd have rated it as low as a 5 as a base game. I think I'd have put it as 6.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, still, we're on a similar wavelength.
Splitting hairs there. Okay, all right. Shelf life and value for money.
Well, we've had it on our shelf for a long time.
We have.
And we are still playing it now.
Yes.
Mainly because of the expansions, I think. Like you said,
I think we left it for quite a while until I got the expansions.
I definitely wanted to keep playing it after I think you were wanting to take a hiatus.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So for me, I definitely think that it's not a game that I would sell.
No, definitely not.
Or get rid of. I think it will stay in our collection.
She says now, listeners, before I fill the entire room with board games.
But yeah, I think I found the base game more replayable than you did, and I definitely think that now we've only played like a handful of the leaders, so I definitely think that
there's a lot more
legs in it, and I'd probably be interested in getting a third expansion that we've not got.
Yeah, definitely, to complete that sort of base set. Yeah. I mean, this is a tricky one for me. I think one thing that I have to say about Mystic Vale is it fills a weird gap in our collection of a game that doesn't take a lot of setup, it doesn't take a lot of thinking, necessarily, and runs about 45 minutes, but it still has a level of, I'm playing a grown-up board game here, it's not just a quick filler. It's got this really unique slot in our collection, and I don't know how else to describe that, which actually makes me think it comes to the table more often than I think it would if I had something similar that I liked more.
It's those nights when we're a bit like, want to play a game, haven't got a huge amount of mental space,
I don't have
or
more
it's a
than
bit
like
late.
an hour in me. Yeah.
Don't really know what I want to play. Let's crack out Mystic Vale.
Because you could say the same about Calico, but Calico is so brain-burny that
really
I really need to think when I'm playing Calico. But this I can just like la la la, nature, I'm casting spells.
Yeah.
It's all good and gravy and fun. It's a relaxing game to play. Mm-hmm. It is a relaxing game to play. I think it because of that, it definitely fits a particular niche, which perhaps has extended shelf life for us. But I think it's a cogent point. If you have a that shaped hole in your collection, maybe you want something like this.
But I can also fully see a lot of people finding Calico that soothing, peaceful, and it's funny enough because actually, next category I've written soothing, peaceful, symmetrical. So I imagine a lot of people find that Calico or perhaps Patchwork does that for them.
I've never played Patchwork, perhaps. One day I might find Calico, but not at the moment.
But again, I think that's very much how we approach it. And again, I think we quite often go with, mana conservation, like how much can we get for this card, rather than necessarily thinking strategically, because that's how we play it. I'm sure there are people out there that perhaps play it harder, but...
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'd like to meet some really die-hard competitive Mystic Vale players. That must be interesting people.
Is that man on the bridge that you talking about?
DM me. Let's go. The other side of this category is value for money, and
I don't know. You don't know how much I paid for it.
Well, I do now, and I know from the expansions. One of the things to bear in mind with Mystic Vale and all of its expansions they are a little bit more expensive than you would think.
It's because of the plastic.
Well, it is. It's because of the construction of it's non-standard construction stuff.
They're not just cards, are they? They have to come with sleeves. They have to come with the plastic.
These are almost like specially made, particularly for this game. And because I haven't seen it anywhere else, I imagine it runs them quite a lot to manufacture. So this is not a dig at the designer or AEG who publishes this. It's just the nature of the beast, for want of a better term. But it does cost more. You get less for your money than what you'd expect.
I'm curious, roughly how much is the base game going for? Do you know?
I think it's around the £40 mark. It's not far away from Dune Imperium. And again, if you compare the two, and like I said, the expansions are like 25. You pay 25 for Marvel Champions expansion, and you get a much more. I mean, not a lot came in those boxes for £25.
Yeah, so again, agreed. Certainly, I think those are overpriced for expansions because of what you get in the expansions.
I don't think they're overpriced. I don't think they're gouging or anything. I don't think they're being greedy. I think they're priced at a point that they have to be for them to make money out of their manufacturer. I think it's just the nature of the beast.
Fair enough. I will stand. Yes, that's what I mean.
So I'm not criticising the publisher or the designer for the money that they're charging. I think, given that it's this really odd production. I get it. I understand it, but I just want to give people a word of warning that you might not get as much as you expect. You know, if you're in this hobby, you pay £40 just for a card game, you expect to get quite a lot, and then you don't. You might be a bit disappointed. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So value for money, shelf life. I've gone with 6.
Oh, do you know what? Snap. Yeah, I also went for 6. And I think that's mainly because I think I realised that you were done with it, and that was a shame. But that's not.
That's not really.
That's not my score.
My husband's bored of the game, so I'm going to mark it down.
Okay, I'm going to give it a 7.
I appreciate the solidarity, sweetheart,
but also, you know, okay. Well,
I think again pre-expansion that probably would have been down somewhere near 4 or 3 for me. And again, I have knocked a bit off my personal score because again, if I'm going to go out and spend £25 on an expansion, I'm probably going to spend something where I get a bit more to it, you know, or I'll buy 3 packs of Marvel Champions or something, you know, something like that. It's difficult for me to justify it when I know what else is out there. So I'm probably not to point off for that.
Okay.
Okay. Is Mystic Vale really fun?
Right. So, the words that I've written down here: peaceful, rhythmic, quite symmetrical. So, I mean, when I compare it to fun with games that there's lots and lots of competitiveness or it's feeling quite thrilling, then no. But that said,
it's not a thrilling game.
It's not a thrilling game like that. It's not a white knuckle ride. It's not tense. You're not fiercely competing over resources.
Yeah.
But it's really soothing and relaxing, and I love that about this.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I can't argue with that. I feel the same. It's a very relaxing game to play. It's just it's easy. You know, it's one of those games where you can get really into it and really, you know, strategize if you want to, but at the same time, you just want to make some pretty cards and get some pretty cards, make some victory points, and not have to think about it too much. It's ideal for that thing.
And there's for me, a massive satisfaction when you complete. You've bought all the advancements that you can on a card, and like I said, when you turn it over and you pick it up, and you're like, "Oh, this is going to be a good one," and you know that it's a big, fat, thick.
Yeah, when you construct your deck in a way that you can get cards that cancel out your red icons. You get growth counters, which you get rid of corruption. You can end up with these massive long runs that stretch throughout the table.
And that's just really satisfying when that happens, and you just feel like, you're in a groove. And for that reason, I absolutely love it. But fun, like whoop whoop, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the flip side for me. While it's all those things, I don't think it sparks me or gets its hooks into me in a way that other things do. So I'd be being disingenuous if I gave it too high a score because there are other things that I do find a lot more actively fun and I feel more engaged with. It has its place, it has its spot, but in general, if I was wanting, you know, a really good time with something, I'd usually choose something else in our collection. So for that reason, I've given it a 6.
So I scored a 7.
Okay. Not far off.
Not far off.
All right. So, at the conclusion of the scoring, that gives us a general rating of 6.5. We round up, as always, or round down, depending, which gives us a general rating of 7, which is probably one higher than I would put it, probably kind of where you would put it.
I think that's where I would put it. Yeah, I think 7 is solid 7.
Yeah, but fairly close there, I guess, which is good. Right, so onwards to our 2-player couples ratings. This is where Al's going to start getting a bit harsher, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So the first of those categories is our table talk rating.
So that's how much you interact with the other players, how much capacity there is to have conversations about what's going on, etc., etc.
So I think it's fair to say that when we first started playing this, we played very solo. So we would quite often set our field out. I think that's not the right word. But
yeah, and
you draw cards,
yeah.
Up to the point that you would potentially spoil, and then we would buy enhancements, and it was very much a quiet solo affair. And I think after a couple of games I was like, look, this isn't working for me, because one, I didn't know necessarily what you were buying, and I think perhaps we were rushing through it a little bit, but also I wasn't necessarily picking out the enhancements advancements.
The natural male enhancements.
The natural male enhancements.
You do realise that's what I'm calling this episode.
Natural druid enhancements that I'd already bought. So quite often I would be missing some of the perks that I'd already bought. And actually, when we slowed things down and we talked each other through perhaps our field, I think there obviously then was an awful lot more discussion. There was a lot more interactivity, and I think it improved the game for me quite a lot.
Okay, all right. I mean, if you follow the rules as written, there's a lot of concurrent play in this game. It recommends you actually doing things while the other player is taking their turn. I don't get that. I guess maybe it's there for expediency to speed up the game.
And then it would be a lot quicker.
It would be a lot quicker. But you just don't know what the other person's doing. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know what you're up against. We quite early on started to slow things down a bit and actually pay attention to what the other person was doing. Which I think helped give it a little bit more strategic depth as well, because otherwise it's just a completely solo game you play together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, pretty much.
But there are a lot of people that like that.
Yes, there are.
A lot of people like playing that way.
Yeah.
I also think it's one of those games that it's quite difficult to work out who's winning unless you're paying attention to what enhancements they're buying. It's your fault. You started it.
I know.
So actually, when you play concurrently, you would get to the end of the game and have absolutely no idea, aside from perhaps when we quickly reckoning up the Vale cards.
Yeah. Fine. I mean, yeah, okay. I think this is really bad for table talk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think this is... I mean, it's one thing paying attention to what somebody else is doing, but there's very little actual interactivity during the game.
Yeah.
It very much is a solo deck builder that you play together.
Yes, agreed.
And I think if that's important to you, then buyer beware, is what I would say. I have given it a 3, because I think it was one of the worst ones in our collection for that, yeah.
Oh, I don't think I rated this one. I wrote lots of things down, but I didn't actually put a score.
I didn't actually rate it.
I think probably I would have given it a 6. Oh, no, I have. Look, 6. There, I see it.
Yeah, I see it. Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, in that vein, it does not work for me at all.
But I think if you're like me and you can talk the hind legs of a donkey, you probably could.
Yeah, baby. But yeah, that's my rating, 3.
All right, fine, 6. Then on to competitiveness. So I think for some of the reasons we've already touched on, you're absolutely right. It is a solo game that you play side by side in many respects.
Yeah, it is.
You're not going to pick cards or pick advancements just to screw over your other partner.
No.
And certainly, whilst the number of level 1 enhancements that you've got is limited, when you start off, level 2s and level 3s are practically infinite. There's no way you'd be able to buy and get through the deck. So actually, there is no competing for scarce resources. Whilst there might be a really good card on the table, if it's gone, there'll be another one. Yeah,
there is. I mean, there's always been moments like, oh, damn, you got that before I did.
Yeah.
But those moments are rare, I have to say. I think...
And you don't work so hard for it. So like other games where you have to really, really work to buy an advancement or to get something, and if that other person then comes in and sweeps in before you, it's really frustrating. It's absolutely gutting because you both worked so hard for it. This isn't, another turn,
it's not
completely refreshes.
I mean, I think I have rated this higher than my table talk there. They're kind of related. I think some of the issues cross interplay between those two categories for me. But I do find... I think the question I always ask myself with competitiveness is, do I find it satisfying to win?
No, not particularly.
I do. Ish.
Yeah.
Which is why I've given it a 5. Because, it's satisfying to win. I think the element of it that I like, the competitive element...
I scored it lower than you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I scored it a 4.
Okay, fair enough. I think the competitive element of it that I like, and this is one of the things that I really liked about Scythe as well, is the control over the game end. I think I figured out that I quite like games where you can control when the game ends. Yeah.
So, as Al said in the very beginning, obviously, when you end the game, it's to do with the number of victory points that you accumulate in-game. Some do it at end-game, some do it in-game. However, once you've got them out on the table, that means that every time you turn that card over,
you get those victory points, and when the pool runs out, you win.
Yeah, so you can't stall it and you can't slow it down.
No, it's like a train that you start going. And I like that aspect of it, because it's all about trying to get yourself into a state where you think, okay, I might take this, and then you start going hard on the victory points cards and going, right, I'm going to... Or you could even go hard on them immediately and try and finish the game really quickly before anybody's got a chance to do anything, and you've got all those bonus victory points you've been getting turn on turn. So that bumped it up a couple of points for me, because I like that. I like that mechanism in games. I really like being able to control, not completely, but have a chance at controlling when the game ends, because I just think it adds a layer of strategic depth that I respond to quite well, enjoy quite well. Yeah. So yeah, 5 from me.
Yeah, so 4 from me. So again, very, very separate, very hard to gauge when the other person's winning or losing.
Yeah.
And I don't think, for me, it particularly matters who wins or loses. I don't get that satisfaction.
It's not that type of game for you,
It's not that kind of game for me. It's very much... What I like about this is something else.
Yeah, completely fair. All right. And scalability. So by scalability, what we mean is, does this play well with 2, first and foremost, but would it be better with more? And in this case, I think 2 is probably the sweet spot.
Yeah, I often find this really hard to rate, particularly when we haven't played it with somebody else.
Yeah, we've got to try and abstract it.
Yeah, it's abstract thinking, really, isn't it? Like, do I think this would be better? I think for me, because aside from your level 1 enhancements, the card pool is pretty much infinite and you don't have that competition about resources, I don't see how adding a third player would necessarily make it any better, because it's not like you're going to be adding to that level of competitiveness. It's
Fully
not
agree.
a white knuckle ride. It's not that tense kind of game.
Agree.
So how is that going to make any difference?
I think the only thing it would add is slowing the game down.
Yeah, because your victory pool pool gets slightly
larger, but not that much larger.
To balance it out. So I think, it would just streamline it a little bit. And I don't think it necessarily needs that, because...
No,
I don't think it's a long and weighty game that you would want to make quicker.
And I think it's a great 2-player game. I don't know why, if you had 3 or 4 people around the table, you'd pull this out. Comparison to a million other games. Yeah,
but I think that's because you quite like betrayal mechanisms and you like those kind of games. So you would always choose something that perhaps has that more social element, particularly at a larger group size.
Yeah, I do.
However, there are a lot of players that might not necessarily feel that way. But
yeah, fair enough. I mean, this is my personal ratings. This is how I feel about it.
I'm just.
I don't think this would. I don't think adding more people would add anything at all. For this, I think the only thing that might get a little bit more interesting is cost. There's card scarcity around the level 1 cards, and the fact that you've only got 3, so if 2 people instead of 1 were buying before you went, you'd then only have a choice of... Oh no, because it's still
because you refresh it. You refresh it every time,
and
there's enough for a good few rounds of those. And it's also worth pointing out that if you have, there are no cards on the table that you can afford, you can spend 2 mana to just buy a fertile land, which just grants you additional mana point
on one of your cards. Yeah. So I've given this an 8 because I'm pretty sure that 2 is the sweet spot for this.
Yeah, so I didn't really... Again, I find this one really difficult to score, and I don't know. My final conclusion was, well, what would adding a third player add? To which I didn't think anything, given that it's quite a solitary game, so I gave it a 10.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Well, that's Hannah's weird, erratic scoring. I think it's perfect as 2-player. Like, what would a third person add?
Yeah, fair enough.
I think for purposes of scoring,
okay.
10.
All right, cool. All right, so that leaves us with a board with each other 2-player rating of 6.
I think that's on the low side.
No, I think that's about right for me.
Oh, really? I think that's a little bit low. I think it's not what we would ordinarily lean towards. I don't think it's a bad 2-player game at all, and I think if that suits your playstyle and if that's what you want, something quite rhythmic, quite peaceful, that you're playing together cooperatively... Well, it's not as competitively, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe that's the
problem. My problem.
But I think if that's what you want from a game, and I think it plays really well as a 2-player game.
Oh, it does. Yeah, absolutely. I just think there's so much better out there, both competitively and cooperatively. I take your point that it fits a certain spot.
Yeah,
and
I think if we took the whole competitive co-op thing out of it, I think actually it would score really highly.
Yeah,
you know.
But again, that's not why I play games.
Yeah.
You know, and again, this is Bird, so my ratings obviously drag that down. But I'm sure that, you know, as a listener, I'm sure you can decide which of those sort of camps you fall into.
It's a good game. I'm glad we've got it, and I think it will stay in our collection. I don't feel like I'm going to part with it anytime soon.
No, it's not. It'll always have a spot on certain nights, I think.
Yeah. When you want natural druid enhancements.
Yes, and when you need natural druid enhancements. TM. So, thank you very much for joining us. As always, we have all of our social media platforms up. If you listen to us on your podcast mechanism of choice, system. Medium, that's the one. Then we'd very much appreciate a review if you have the time to leave it. But until next time.